Y'all ready for this?
No, actually, I just need a minute.
Oh yeah, no worries. I'm all about people being ready. That's why I asked. I'll just be over here in the corner. You let me know. Yeah, I can't wait till they're ready. All right.
Hey,
Hello, everyone.
welcome.
I'm Graham.
I am Ashkahn, and it's time to get funky.
It's time to get daily.
Daily. Get your daily funk on.
All right, here's today's question. I have just started listening to your podcast and love what you are doing.
Nice.
Yes,
Good.
Rocking it.
Good
You
question.
should more question. Yeah, great question. All right, and
Let's probably
we'll see you
suspect
guys.
why this one got chosen.
See you guys tomorrow. I have a question around capacity expectations.
Okay.
We are new.
Oh,
Okay,
nice.
now new.
Welcome. Congratulations.
We are now. I think it's supposed to be
Wait, what?
now. It says new.
Oh,
Yeah, we are now just applying for financing to set
Oh.
up a 3-pod center
I take back my congratulations.
with new fit out, and we're trying to gauge what the capacity would be for the first 6 months to a year. We expect to give away quite a few free floats.
Nice.
Good, you've been listening. To key people to introduce them to the concept of floating, and expect full paying clients to be about 30 to 40% capacity for the first 6 months. What's normal for new float centers in the U.S.?
Okay.
Well, first of
guess-
all, it totally depends. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I'm going to assume by full paying they mean also like discounts, like memberships and stuff like that. Not just like literally full price.
I think they just meant like customers.
Not
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Well, it totally depends. There's not like a simple answer to this question, you know? I mean, and even just between whether it's a 1 or 2 tank center in a small town versus having like a 5 or 6 tank center at the heart of LA or New York or something like that is just going to be a very different kind of capacity that you might be able to expect from an endeavor like that. So, given that it's all very specific to what you're doing, I guess like looking to data is always a nice thing to do when possible. And it's not like we have a ton of it for the float industry, but we do have an industry report that we put out through Float Tank Solutions every year. And for the last couple of years, it might even be 3 years, we've been asking people to also say what a number of floats that they're running and kind of break that down per number of float tanks that they have at their center. So that's definitely worth going to take a peek at. The 2018 State of the Float Industry Report, we'll link to it in the show notes. But the average range of floats per tank was 73 to 112 per month per float tank that you have. So that doesn't exactly show you capacity. In addition to it depending on where you are and what's normal for your area, it also obviously depends on the number of floats that you're running in a day, which can be controlled by your hours and by your length of float that you're running as well. So, even 112 floats can mean different things to a center who's running 90-minute floats versus 60-minute floats, for example.
Yeah. And your hours of operation, I mean, you might find that if you're open for longer, your percentage capacity goes down, but you're running more floats per day than you would otherwise. And
Yeah.
so, like, is that a bad thing? Probably not. Like, you're running more floats every day than you would otherwise, even though you're like less full percentage-wise.
Yeah, and this one again, in the question, it really differentiates between free floats and paid floats.
Yeah.
Which these stats obviously don't necessarily report on.
But you have a good hunch there. I feel like your intuition is not that off from reality. Like, if you're doing a good job, especially at the beginning, you're probably, according to how we like to do our marketing, you are giving away a lot of free floats, and you are really trying to fill up your float tanks as much as possible. And, expecting 30, 40% of those to actually be kind of quote unquote real paying customers for the beginning and to be hustling to do marketing to fill the rest of them is realistic. Like, it's not totally, out of sync with what you could expect. And it probably means that you're doing a pretty good job with those numbers. I mean, a float center that's been around for a while and I feel like is doing a really good job and is like financially stable and those sorts of things, like what you would consider kind of a good, successful float center, is probably somewhere around like 80 to 90% capacity.
And I might even go a little Well, again, the capacity is so weird. It depends on your hours of operation, too, and what you're actually doing. Like, I usually say 75 to 80, but yeah, somewhere in that range, right? Like 75 to 90% is the max that you could possibly be booked out at. Tanks go down, they take repairs, people do last-minute cancellations. Like, there is no way to realistically get to 100%. And
it's partially, it's also because we have these ebbs and flows in our schedule based off of, like, the weekdays and stuff like that, right? So, like, you want to have enough float tanks to be able to handle the weekends when things are really popular. Like 80% doesn't mean that every day 20% of your float tanks are empty, right? It probably means you're pretty like full on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and maybe lighter on like Tuesday, Wednesday morning sort of things. That's where some of that balance comes out.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, a lot of that buffer is also places where you can sneak people in with free floats. Again, not that we need to convince you, question asker. But I mean, to me, that's good. I mean, if you're pushing 100% capacity anyway or getting up really high, you should think about expanding your hours because it will mean you can get more people in, and it'll also mean that your members get less upset. You know, if you get above a certain capacity, that's actually also really bad for some of your regulars who want to get in and schedule floats last minute and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just that's a little framework for ideal range. To me, I would say the danger zone for overall capacity. Well, let's talk about paying capacity. Sure. That's what they were curious about. I'd say the danger zone to me is below about like a third. You know, you get down below like 33.3%. Like that to me is the like serious danger zone of actual paying customers, excluding you, staff, free floats, things like that.
Yeah, it just gets hard at that point. I mean, also like one, you probably have a bigger space. You're paying more rent. You're like, you know, there's more float tank maintenance, all that stuff because you have a bigger float center.
Yeah.
But also like 33% capacity still might mean that on some days you have a full schedule at certain time slots and empty times otherwise. And then it just gets hard to like balance out staffing, and you may need to have more people there to deal with those times where all your tanks are booked at like 7 p.m. or something, but then people are just kind of sitting around a little bit earlier in the day, so that you're kind of like losing more in terms of expenses in a setup like that.
Yeah, and I'd pretty much say between like 33 to 45 or 50% is kind of like the warning zone, but not the danger zone. And again, like take all of these numbers with like a huge dose of Epsom salt, right? Like just do it.
Glug. Just take a huge sip out of your float tank there when you're thinking about this.
There'll be plenty of grains in there. And what you'll, because these are giant generalities, but there's no way to answer this specifically without like an exact use case. So like somewhere between that like 1/3 to 1/2 range, I would call again the warning zone of, you know, you're probably not in immediate danger of shutting down, but if you don't start pushing past that 45-50% mark of paying customers, then things could turn bad. Or if again you hit some disasters and it turns out you need to do a bunch of repairs on your rooms because salt has destroyed them, you might not have enough money in savings to be able to do those repairs. And then, above that 50% mark of actual paying customers and, you know, as close to full price, obviously, as you can get, that starts to feel a little safer. And, like, now what we're talking about is the actual margins that you're making on top. Like, how profitable is your business after that?
And I really, you know, you should be shooting for 110%. Like
both in terms of effort and capacity.
In fact, like, you throw an extra float tank in the parking lot.
I thought you were going to say throw an extra floater in someone else's tank. Sorry, Mary's going to be sneaking in here with you today. 110%.
But yeah, you seem on top of it.
Also, I would say that and it's almost hard to say. Like from my perspective, I more measure our revenue than I do the actual percentage of people who are paying some money versus not paying money, just because discounts can vary so much too. I mean, like a $10 discount is very different than, a 90% discount or bringing a float down to $10.
Yeah, revenue, average, like income per float is another good thing to look at.
Yeah. And I don't even have like a number for that for you necessarily, but I would say when you are opening up, the actual capacity numbers that I'd aim for, including free floats, are as close to 100% as you can. 110% is what you should. No, I mean, maybe not if it involves the parking lot tank.
Yeah, things get weird.
Or the random person.
So you should stick a little under that.
But you're aiming for 100%. Whatever you have to do, give away as many free floats as you can, launch on Groupon. We have an episode where we talk about kind of launching marketing more. But, I mean, that's it. And that creates this momentum that if you get as many people as possible coming in, regardless of how much they're paying, that's how you build up to that over 50% paying customers, even within a few months. When Float On launched, I mean, we weren't open 24 hours a day. We had more limited hours, but we launched with around 80% capacity, and we've pretty much kept around that number, 70 to 80%, and just kind of increased our hours of operation to match those. And so we don't have the exact stats from early on what percentage of those are paying versus non-paid customers or anything like that, but it does give you an idea that it is definitely possible to start and just be booking up your tanks really solidly, and to know that maybe differentiating between paying and non-paying customers is a good mental exercise. But in reality, if you're keeping a high capacity, the non-paying customers are going to turn into more paying customers coming in, both from repeat visits, from word of mouth, stuff like that. So in some senses, I do think paying attention to just your overall raw capacity number is kind of a better number to look at than even who's paying versus not.
Yeah.
And if you have questions of your own, where do people go, Ashkahn?
They go to dailysolutions.com, which actually will redirect you to floattanksolutions.com/podcast. But it's a little shorter to type in. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, but it doesn't promote Float Tank Solutions as well. Like we had decided when we first started this podcast, we were going to say Float Tank Solutions so that they knew that that's who we were affiliated with.
Yeah.
Sneak a little marketing in there.
Must have not been here.
Marketing
for any day until today.
What?
I've been outsourcing this to a job in the Philippines.
It's gotten weird. We're winding down.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys later.
Yeah, we'll miss you.